At our own engagement party in front of our families, my fiancée announced, "I don't get a say in our life." I just smiled and said, "You are 100% correct." So when she got back from her healing trip to Bali, she found the locks had been changed, and her place in my home had been filled by a more loyal companion. You see, I'm a structural engineer. I believe a foundation has to be solid. She's an interior designer. She believed our relationship was just another room to be decorated. To understand what happened at that party, you need to understand the fundamental difference between me and Chloe. I'm a structural engineer. My world is built on physics, on mathematics, on the cold, hard, beautiful truth of materials. I build things that are meant to last, things that carry weight. Chloe was an interior designer, but not the practical kind. She was a curator of beige fantasies, a high priestess of the Instagram-able moment. She built immaculate, sterile scenes that were meant to be photographed, not lived in. And for the last 2 years, I had been living in one of her installations. The house was mine. The mortgage had my name on it. The property tax bills also my name. But the soul of the house, that was entirely hers. She had systematically painted over every trace of my personality with 50 shades of greige. My comfortable worn leather armchair was replaced by a rigid white monstrosity that looked like a piece of modern art and felt like a medieval torture device. My collection of framed blueprints from famous architectural projects was banished to a closet, replaced by a series of abstract canvases that looked like the printer had run out of ink halfway through the job. My home had become a showroom, a beautiful, lifeless showroom that I just happened to sleep in. It wasn't just the decor. It was a symptom of a deeper issue, a foundation with cracks that I had been consciously ignoring for far too long. The red flags were there. They weren't just flags. They were giant waving banners in a hurricane. There was the way she talked about my work. She once looked at a picture of a bridge I had spent a year helping to design, a complex structure of steel and concrete, holding up thousands of lives every day, and called it a bit grey. She said, "It's just so functional. Don't you ever want to create something beautiful?" To her, beauty was an aesthetic. To me, beauty was a bridge that didn't collapse. We were speaking different languages. Then there was the money. My money. Her career was a passion project funded by my profession. The spontaneous weekend trips to boutique hotels, the designer bags that would appear after she'd had a stressful week, the constant stream of packages containing pointless, expensive objects, designed to sit on a shelf and gather dust. When I once gently brought up the idea of a budget, she looked at me with genuine confusion. She said, "But what's the point of you having a good job if we can't enjoy it?" Notice the we. We enjoyed it, but only one of us paid for it. And her friends. A flock of chattering clones who communicated exclusively through brunch photos and passive-aggressive comments on each other's posts. They would descend upon my house, rearranging my things for a better photo op, speaking in a coded language of brand names and influencers I'd never heard of. I wasn't a person to them. I was a background character, the silent, stable provider who made their aesthetic lifestyle possible. I saw it all. Every ignored bill, every dismissive comment, every time I was treated like an accessory in her perfectly curated life. I saw it, and I did what so many of us do. I told myself it was just a small price to pay. I told myself that this is what compromise looked like. I was trying to build a foundation for a life together, and I kept pouring concrete into the cracks, hoping it would hold. The engagement party was supposed to be the final capstone on that foundation. Instead, it was the demolition. When she stood there in my house in front of our families and delivered that line, the world went quiet. The chattering stopped. The music faded, and in that silence I didn't feel anger. I felt a profound clarity. It was the moment I realized a deeper truth about power. We are taught that power is about arguing your case, about fighting back, about winning the debate. But there's a greater power, a quieter one. It's the power of strategic withdrawal. It's the art of the quiet exit. When someone shows you that they are not playing by the same rules of respect and partnership, the most powerful move isn't to shout louder, it's to stop playing their game entirely. You don't argue with the pieces on the board. You simply stand up and you walk away from the table. Her words weren't an invitation to an argument. They were a declaration of her terms. She was telling me exactly what my role was in her life. A silent partner, a utility, a foundation that should be unseen and unheard. And in that moment of absolute clarity, I decided to give her exactly what she wanted. I would accept her terms. I would stop acting like we were married. I would take back my voice not by raising it, but by using it to agree with her just once before taking it and everything else away for good. The moment the Uber carrying Chloe to the airport turned the corner, the clock started. A strange sense of calm settled over me. There was no anger, no sadness. There was only a plan, a blueprint. And as an engineer, I am very, very good at executing a blueprint. Operation Foundation Reconstruction commenced at 1400 hours on a Friday. It had 3 distinct phases. Phase 1, secure the flank. My first move wasn't to a hardware store or a moving company. It was next door. I walked over to Mrs. Evelyn's house with a lemon cheesecake, her favorite. Mrs. Evelyn is a 75-year-old widow with a prize-winning rose garden and a neighborhood surveillance network that would make the CIA blush. Mrs. Evelyn, I said after the requisite small talk about the weather and the moral failings of the local squirrels. I find myself in a situation. I require a co-conspirator for a small piece of theater. Her eyes lit up. The woman lived for drama. I laid out the facts. I told her what happened at the engagement party. I repeated Chloe's exact words. You don't get a say. I didn't have to embellish. The truth was damning enough. By the time I was finished, she was patting my hand, her face a mask of righteous fury. That shameless little hussy, she declared. Don't you worry, Marcus. You leave it to me. What's my line? I gave her a simple script. She took to the task with the enthusiasm of a Broadway veteran preparing for opening night. My flank was secure. Phase 2 demolition and site clearance. I returned home and began the purge. I didn't just pack Chloe's things. I catalogued them. I conducted a forensic analysis of a life lived for appearances. I bought a stack of professional-grade moving boxes and a thick black marker. The first box was labeled beige pillows and pointless pottery. The second, coffee table books that have never been opened. My personal favorite was a series of boxes for her wardrobe. Box 3, Ampere's sequin dresses for events I wasn't invited to. Box 3B, 42 pairs of identical-looking high heels. Box 3C, activewear for inactive afternoons. Her mountain of makeup and skincare products was packed into boxes simply labeled various goops and powders. By Saturday morning, every physical trace of her existence was boxed, labeled, and stacked with geometric precision in the living room. I hired a team from a moving app. They were in and out in under an hour. Everything went into a 10 by 5 foot storage unit. I paid for 1 month in advance. I considered it a generous non-marital severance package. The site was clear. Phase 3, the rebuild. With the house cleared of her aesthetic, the real work began. Her sterile white couch, a crime against comfort, was listed on Facebook Marketplace and sold within 2 hours. It was replaced by a gigantic black leather sectional sofa with approximately 16 cup holders and a built-in refrigerator. Her sad minimalist coffee table was replaced by a vintage pool table I found on Craigslist. It wasn't perfectly level, but it was solid oak. The bedroom was next. I took down the bizarre macrame thing she had hung over the bed. In its place, I mounted a framed high-resolution architectural blueprint of the Golden Gate Bridge, a monument to function, to strength, to things that were built to last. I rolled up the beige rug that seemed designed to show every single speck of dirt and replaced it with a heavy, dark Persian rug that felt solid under my feet. The house was no longer a showroom. It was a fortress. My fortress. The foundation was sound again. By Saturday evening, the house was transformed. The structure was sound. The design was mine, but it was still just a structure. It was a fortress, yes, but it was an empty one. It was missing a heartbeat. It needed a soul. Chloe had filled the space with things. I needed to fill it with life, and I knew exactly what kind of life I wanted. Something loyal, something uncomplicated, something that finds joy in the simple act of being present, not in staging a life for an unseen audience. So on Sunday morning, I drove to the local animal shelter. I went with the intention of just looking. An hour later, I was walking out with a co-pilot. His name was Brutus, and he was not a small dog. He was a 120-pound Bernese mountain dog, a glorious, fluffy, four-legged wrecking ball of pure, unadulterated loyalty. The shelter said he was found wandering abandoned. I looked into his big brown soulful eyes and I understood. He was a builder like me looking for a foundation to call home. He was a strategist who knew the value of a quiet companionship. When we got back to the house, he didn't hesitate. He walked in, took one look at the gigantic leather sofa, claimed the best spot as his own, with a deep, contented sigh, and promptly fell asleep snoring like a lumberjack. He fit into the space perfectly. He was the final, most important piece of the new design. He was the heartbeat. With Brutus snoring softly on the couch, I moved to the final steps of the blueprint, the security protocols. First, the locks. I had a new high-security deadbolt. I installed it myself. The metallic click of the bolt sliding home for the first time was the most satisfying sound I had heard in years. It was the sound of a boundary being set, the sound of a fortress being secured. Then the digital perimeter. I logged into my Wi-Fi network settings. The network name, a whimsical, meaningless phrase Chloe had chosen, was the first to go. I renamed it. The new network was called NoSayNoStay. The password was just as simple, just as clear. I typed it in letter by letter. You were right. I stood in the middle of my living room, the scent of new leather in the air, the sound of Brutus's soft snoring filling the silence. I sat down on the sofa next to him, and he lifted his massive head and rested it on my lap. I looked at the framed blueprint of the Golden Gate Bridge on the wall, a structure of strength, an icon of resilience. My home was no longer a showroom, it was a home. And for the first time in a very, very long time, I felt completely, utterly, peacefully prepared. The storm was coming, and I was ready. Sunday evening, 9 p.m. on the dot. A notification pinged on my phone. Motion detected at the front door. The show was about to begin. I watched on my screen as Chloe, tanned from her weekend of healing, strolled up to my front door humming. The comedy began almost immediately. She slid her key into the lock. It went in, but it didn't turn. The new high-security deadbolt I'd installed was doing its job quietly and efficiently. Her humming stopped. A look of mild annoyance crossed her face. She jiggled the key. Nothing. She tried it again with more force. Still nothing. Then came an exasperated sigh, and she started banging on the door. From the couch, Brutus lifted his massive head, let out a single deep, rumbling woof, and then, as if deciding the matter was handled, went right back to sleep. Her phone came out. My phone, sitting on the pool table next to me, began to vibrate. I took a calm sip of my beer and hit decline. She called again. Declined. This cycle repeated 5 times. The banging on the door got louder. Marcus opened the door. What is wrong with you? My key isn't working. I remained silent. I just watched the screen. This was all part of the performance. After another 5 minutes of increasingly frantic pounding, she seemed to give up. The camera showed her pacing on the porch, running her hands through her hair in frustration. And then, right on cue, a porch light flickered on next door. Showtime. It was Mrs. Evelyn in her housecoat, holding a watering can despite the late hour. "Oh, Chloe, dear, is that you, Mrs. Evelyn?" called out her voice, a perfect blend of surprise and neighborly concern. "Mrs. Evelyn, thank God," Chloe said, rushing over to the edge of my porch. "I can't get in. My key isn't working. Is Marcus home? I can see the lights on." "Oh, Marcus is home," Mrs. Evelyn said, nodding sagely as she watered a rosebush that was clearly already damp. "He's had the most wonderful weekend. A real transformation, he called it." Chloe stopped. "Transformation? What are you talking about?" "Well, he told me the good news," Mrs. Evelyn said, leaning on her railing conspiratorially. "He said you two have come to a new understanding. He told me that you made it very clear that you aren't married, and that he doesn't get a say in anything you do. So he decided to celebrate his newfound freedom." Chloe just stared, her mouth hanging slightly open. "He redecorated the whole house," Mrs. Evelyn continued, barely containing her glee. "It's a man's home now," he said. "Very structural. And the best part," she added, delivering the final line with theatrical flair, "he got a dog. A great big, beautiful boy named Brutus. He said he wanted a companion who was loyal and didn't talk back. Isn't that just the sweetest thing?" The look on Chloe's face was a masterpiece, a slow-motion collision of disbelief and horror. She slowly turned and peered through my living room window. From my vantage point on the couch, I saw her face pressed against the glass. Her eyes widened as she took in the scene: the gigantic leather sofa, the pool table, and the giant snoring Bernese mountain dog occupying her spot. She let out a sound that was somewhere between a gasp and a sob. She whipped out her phone and started texting me. My phone lit up with a novel's worth of angry all-caps messages, accusations, threats, demands. That's when I decided to respond. I let her finish her tirade. Then I typed out a single, simple text message. You said to stop acting like we're married. You said, I don't get a say. I agree. This is my house, and you don't get a say in how I live in it. Since we are not married, I've returned your non-marital property to a secure location. The address is 123 Storageway Unit 42. The code is 1234. You have 1 month. Have a great life. I hit send. Then I blocked her number. The doorbell camera showed her reading the text. She looked at her phone. She looked at the window. She looked back at her phone. Then she let out a scream of pure, unadulterated rage and threw her phone onto my lawn. It was a truly spectacular meltdown. She ranted and raved for another 10 minutes before one of her friends finally arrived to pick her up. From the couch, I gave Brutus a pat on the head. Checkmate. The social media fallout was as predictable as it was pathetic. The day after her defeat, Chloe's Instagram stories became a shrine to her own perceived victimhood. Vague, passive-aggressive quotes about knowing your worth and cutting out toxic energy set to sad, generic piano music. Her friends, the Greek chorus of brunch enthusiasts, chimed in with comments like, "You're too good for him, Queen, and his loss." They were trying to paint a masterpiece of betrayal, but they were using a paint-by-numbers kit. It was all so generic, it was almost funny. I let them have their digital pity party for about 48 hours. I watched their narrative take shape. Marcus, the cold, unstable monster who kicked his loving fiancée out for no reason. I gave them enough rope. Then I decided to provide some much-needed context. I didn't engage with them directly. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. Instead, I made a single public post on my own page. It was a simple photo album with 2 pictures. The first picture was of my living room from a month ago. The sad beige couch. The pointless bowls. The general aura of a dentist's waiting room. The caption was one word, before. The second picture was my living room now. The glorious leather sectional, the pool table, the glowing blueprint on the wall, and sprawled majestically across the sofa, Brutus, looking deeply content. The caption was also one word, after. And then I added a final comment below the album. Just 1 sentence. She told me I didn't get a say in things, so I decided to listen. NoSayNoStay. The post was a tactical nuke. The sheer, unadulterated pettiness of it, combined with the undeniable cuteness of Brutus, was a winning combination. The story now, with the proper context, spread like wildfire through our mutual friends. The narrative was no longer psycho boyfriend kicks girlfriend out. It was entitled Fiancé tells boyfriend their relationship is a joke, is shocked when he believes her. The Queen comments on Chloe's page stopped. The sympathetic DMs dried up. Her friends went completely silent. To understand why Chloe's digital empire crumbled so quickly, you need to understand the currency she was dealing in. In sociology, there's a concept called social capital. It's the value you get from your network of relationships. But not all social capital is created equal. Chloe's network was built almost entirely on what's called bridging capital. It's weak, opportunistic. It connects you to people who can provide you with something, status access, invitations to the right parties. Her friends were there for the lifestyle I provided, the beautiful house for their photo shoots, the expensive wine I paid for. When I withdrew the assets, the bridge collapsed. My social capital, on the other hand, was bonding capital, built on genuine reciprocal relationships. My friends called to check on me, not to get a good photo angle. Chloe's network was an aesthetic. Mine was a structure. And when the storm hits, aesthetics don't offer much shelter. The final act of her campaign was predictably a legal one. I received a letter from a lawyer dripping with self-righteous indignation. It demanded immediate access to the house to retrieve her wrongfully held property and financial compensation for being unlawfully evicted and made homeless. I didn't even call my lawyer. I just emailed him a copy of the letter. He responded an hour later. He told me he had sent back a very simple package. It contained 3 items: a copy of the mortgage statement clearly showing only my name, a copy of the utility bills also only in my name, and a polite 1-sentence inquiry as to whether Chloe would be interested in settling the matter by paying me back for the 6 months of rent, utilities, and food she had consumed while living in my home as a non-married person, with no obligations. We never heard from her lawyer again. The aftermath was quiet. The digital storm passed as quickly as it had arrived, leaving behind a strange, calm silence. My life for the first time in years was blessedly beautifully boring. The house was no longer a stage. The pool table was terrible for actual pool, but it made an excellent surface for folding laundry. The leather sofa was outrageously comfortable. The fortress was at peace. My days took on a new rhythm, dictated not by social obligations or the need to maintain an aesthetic, but by the simple, unwavering needs of a 120-pound dog. Mornings started with the gentle, insistent pressure of a giant paw on my chest. We'd walk through the neighborhood as the sun came up. I learned the names of the other dog owners. We didn't talk about our careers or our weekend plans. We talked about our dogs. It was a simpler, cleaner form of social capital. I learned that Brutus was terrified of squirrels but believed he could take on a garbage truck. I learned that his favorite food was whatever I was currently eating. And I learned that the quiet companionship of a loyal animal was worth more than all the performative affection in the world. He was a living, breathing, snoring symbol of my new life. A life built on substance, not style. I didn't hear from Chloe, but news travels in strange ways. The validation when it came was not something I sought out. It found me. About a month ago, I was at a hardware store on a Saturday, trying to decide between 2 different types of wood stain. Brutus was waiting patiently in the car. A woman approached me hesitantly. It took me a moment to place her. She was one of Chloe's friends, one of the less vocal members of the brunch chorus. I think her name was Tiffany. Or maybe Brittany. "Marcus," she said, her voice awkward. "Hey." I just nodded. "Hey, look," she said, shifting her weight from one foot to the other. I wanted to say I'm sorry. About all that. That night was out of line." I shrugged. She said what she said. I just took her at her word. "Yeah, I know," she said, shaking her head. "She's a lot. I'm actually staying with my parents for a bit. Had to get away from it." She paused, then seemed to decide to just unload. She crashed with me after. You know, it lasted less than a week. All she did was complain about how you ruined her life. She was furious that you posted that picture of the dog. Said you were trying to humiliate her. I stayed quiet. She eventually had to move back in with her parents. 3 hours away. I heard she called them last week complaining that they were making her get a job. A real 9-to-5 job. She said it was all your fault. She looked at me expecting a reaction. I didn't give her one. She sighed. "Honestly," she said, looking around the store, "it looks like you're doing just fine." And she was right. I was doing just fine. I bought my wood stain. I went home. I gave Brutus a pat on the head. My fortress was peaceful. My foundation was sound. And for the first time, the man living inside it was too. Looking back on it, all the most powerful thing I did wasn't changing the locks or hiring the movers. The real checkmate, the move that ended the game, was much quieter. It happened in that silent moment at the party right after she laughed. The real revenge was simply listening to what she said and believing her. She told me exactly who she was. She told me exactly what our relationship meant to her. She handed me the unvarnished truth, and all I did was accept it. I didn't argue. I didn't try to change her mind. I just agreed. The rest was just logistics. As an engineer, I work with undeniable truths every single day. The tensile strength of steel, the load-bearing capacity of a concrete pillar. These things aren't negotiable. You can't wish them into being stronger. You can't ignore a crack in the foundation and hope it goes away. You have to see it, you have to acknowledge it, and then you have to build based on that reality. For too long, I had been trying to build a life on a foundation I knew was cracked, pouring my own efforts into a structure that was fundamentally unsound. She said I didn't get a say. And now in her life, I truly don't. And in my life, she doesn't either. The final blueprint is elegant in its simplicity. It's easy to feel satisfied with this story because everything worked out so well. The house is peaceful. Brutus is a magnificent roommate, and my life is undeniably better. But that brings up a more important question. What if it hadn't? What if after I closed that door, my career took a hit? What if I struggled financially? Would the decision I made still have been the right one? The answer is absolutely yes. We have a tendency to judge our decisions based on their outcomes, something called outcome bias. But the true value of the action I took doesn't lie in the fact that I kept the house and found peace. It lies in the moment I chose my own self-respect over a toxic partnership. The victory wasn't measured by my bank account. It was measured by the peace I reclaimed for my own soul. Regardless of what came after, the act of defending my own boundaries, of honoring my own dignity, was a victory in itself. The material success is just a satisfying epilogue. The real win happened the moment I smiled that empty smile and said, "You're right." I look at the framed blueprint of the bridge on my wall. A beautiful, complex structure built on unwavering principles designed to withstand any storm. It's a reminder, you can't build a life on a weak foundation. My foundation is solid now. It's built for one man and his dog, and it is unshakable.